Yo, what are you doing right now? We are going to get real about men's issues, who Jesus is, and who we are as men in Christ. We're going to hear Trey, Jeremy, Michael, and Brad break it down. These guys call themselves the Cussin Christians. All right, guys, what is going on?
There we go. Great day in the neighborhood. Happy New Year.
Irish win.
You had a big W last night. You're Irish.
You know what? It says one thing. All right, Indiana lost to Ohio State, and they okay, and Notre Dame beat Indiana. So the only two teams that Indiana lost to are in the Final Four of the NCAA. So that says a lot for Indiana's program. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody said, "Oh, they didn't play anybody," but I think Indiana did a great job this year.
Well, your statement about Oregon being hard to beat didn't age too well.
I know it.
I know. Right? I even said I was pulling for them. I was hoping they'd win because I was like, man, that'd be great for their conference. It'd be, spread the competition out.
And I can't stand Ohio State. So,
well, Happy New Year. Although we woke up New Year's morning 2 days ago to awful news from New Orleans, and it just kind of was sobering at the least to see what happened. I think I woke up at about 6:30 in the morning, turned on the news feed, and all that had been going on about 3 hours. In the middle, New Orleans is just so much fun. That whole area is just so awesome. And you see all kind of stuff there. And I've got memories
you got
of all
beads?
kinds.
Do you have beads?
I might. I'm neither confirming nor denying.
What did you get them for?
That's right.
Neither confirming nor denying.
You're not supposed to come home with beads, Trey.
I might have. I know what the beads do, I should say.
That's right.
All right. And then a few hours later, Las Vegas, and then all these crazy things are happening the night before. I mean, lightning struck New York City.
Oh,
and Washington, D.C. at the same time. It's all
I didn't hear about that.
The Capitol building and the Washington Monument.
Yeah.
And then the World Trade Center.
Direct hits.
Wow.
And they were all with really close timing. And then Puerto Rico, half the country goes black that night. And it just was bizarre stuff happening. It almost made me think of Y2K.
I
remember how we were all getting all nervous about Y2K, and we're all watching that clock hit midnight and then going past, but it was awful to see that. And as things started unfolding with this guy, I thought of my brother sitting next to me, and I texted him, and you didn't hesitate to say what you thought it was. And I thought, well, we're doing podcasts. We got to get him on and let's talk about it. It happened again, something major with a terrorism attack. ISIS motivated. I'm not even sure that's the right word to use, but this time it's an American soldier, and. Joseph Assad, thanks for coming and joining us. Great friend of all of ours, a great friend of the ministries. We got some cool stuff he's going to be helping us with in February. But Joseph, with your background in intelligence and the CIA, I just kind of wanted to. I didn't want to start the year with something like this, but I kind of want to get your take on everything. And I know you guys probably have some questions as well, but. Joseph Assad, thanks for coming in, man. It's good to see you. Happy New Year to you, bro, and you and your beautiful wife, and we're glad you're here with us.
Happy New Year, although I wish it was in better circumstances. What you talked about, Trey, it is tragic, and although I do have to say it is not surprising, it is just yet another reminder of the ideology of hate and the ideology of destruction and death that is still there. That's the problem with ideological warfare. You can't bomb your way out of it. You can't kill it with a gun.
Right.
It is there. It permeates. It percolates, and eventually it drives somebody to do something so terrible as we saw Shamsuddin Jabbar do in New Orleans. So I was not surprised, and I immediately, the type of attack, the modus operandi, and the initial reports that came out, it indicated right away that this was ISIS or ISIS-inspired.
You didn't hesitate when I said, "What's your take?" You sent me 4 letters, and that was it, ISIS. And I'm like, "Oh man, how'd they get here?" Of course, that's what your question. Okay, how'd they get here? Why are they doing this? And then it comes out it's an American.
And here's the thing, one of the things that caught my attention right away is the FBI's initial assessment of this, and they were very adamant to say that this was not terrorism, was not ISIS, and you had the I have the quote here directly from the FBI, special agent, Duncan. She was the special agent in charge. She said, "This is not a terrorist attack. What we have here is improvised explosive devices." But it's not a terrorist attack.
Do you chalk that up? I mean, can you chalk that up to just a low-level person having this happen the very first time, and she's actually, because she ain't a player, she's a local agent that had to make a statement. I'm just trying to see both sides here.
I wish that was the case.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think we are seeing a systemic effort by the federal government that has gone so woke in so many aspects and so many agencies that this is a direct result of that, where the first instinct is to, let's protect Muslims.
Don't want to offend
let's
anybody.
deny. We don't want to offend anybody.
Right.
This is not terrorism. How could you rule that out within the first few minutes and make such a sweeping statement?
Right.
Especially when there's an ISIS flag behind the truck, right? I mean,
I would say that's a clue.
Yeah, I would say it's a clue. Yeah.
Even
It's a
in
possibility.
Even in law enforcement terms, they call that a clue.
Yeah.
It's interesting. 2 days before New Year's, Donna was out of town, so I was at home watching. I watched Patriots Day about the Boston Marathon bombing, right? And I know it's Hollywood, but they were seriously when the characters, the police chief, the FBI guy, they were in that big warehouse, and they said, "We got to say this is terrorism." And the FBI guy said, "I'm not prepared to say it's terrorism yet." What if she would have come out and said, "We're not ready to call this terrorism," but she just came out and said, "This isn't."
Right.
The linguistics of it, to me, was way off.
And that is the culture of our current FBI, current Department of Justice,
Right.
DOD, the CIA. It is immediately to not call something terrorism, and certainly not attach it to Islamic terrorism. I'll never forget, Trey. I was in one of the stations when I was on active duty in the Central Intelligence Agency. I was a chief of operations in one of the overseas stations, and a station is a place that's in a country that we have interest in, and in that particular country, it's a Muslim country. We were cooperating with the local government. We're sharing intelligence. They're sharing with us. We were working jointly on counterterrorism, and we had a certain CIA director that came to station, and we were to brief the CIA director and his staff on the current operations in that country. And as a chief of operations, I was chosen to brief on the ongoing, joint operations that we have with the host country. And I'll never forget this because in my brief, I'm reading from a liaison memo. A liaison memo, that is what our partners would pass us as intelligence. And I'm reading it to the director, and I said, the host country's biggest concern is Muslim extremists operating both domestically, but also exporting their ideology and their terrorism abroad. And he immediately stopped me and said, "I'm sorry, we can't call it Muslim extremism. We can't call it Islamic extremism." And, still a bit naive, I pushed back on the director and I said, "Well, sir, I'm reading from a memo in Arabic, that came to us from our host country, which is a Muslim country, one of the major Muslim countries in the world. That's how they describe it. That's not how I am describing it. So, but that pointed out to me how we in the West, or in America specifically, we try to define what Islam is or what Muslim extremism is. We are the apologists instead of calling things what they are. Muslim countries are suffering today from Islamic extremism, from radicalism, and these radicals are finding a safe haven, safe harbor to come to the West. You saw what happened in Germany just a couple of weeks ago. In Sweden, in the UK, and in the United States, because they know that they are free to operate here. There is a reason why none of the Gulf countries, none of the Muslim countries are taking refugees who are from Syria, from Afghanistan, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh. They're not taking them in because they're worried about their safety and security and the ideological extremism that they would be bringing to Muslim countries. But yet we are being pushed here to open our borders. Who's coming from the southern border? You got people coming from every country.
Yeah.
Particularly, you're seeing people coming from Pakistan, from Afghanistan, from Egypt, from Syria, from Morocco. A lot of them are radicalized, and we don't do anything about it. Remember how many people it took to carry out 9/11?
Yeah.
16.
Right.
19 if you count the others who didn't carry out. Yeah.
And what that 16,
Right.
roughly, what was the amount of time that it took for them to play that long game for the big payoff on September 11th? A couple of years they were here.
Some of them were here for a couple of years. Some of them were students. Some of them were enrolled in flight schools. Some of them even became U.S. persons.
Flight schools where they didn't want to learn how to land.
You can't just steering only.
They set out those days.
I just want to get up in the air. I failed the landing portion of my test, but I really don't care.
But to show you the optimism bias that is built into our federal government, the Central Intelligence Agency had flagged a couple of those 9/11 hijackers to the FBI. Well, the FBI pushed back and said, "Oh, we can't do anything because they haven't done anything. There is no derogatory information. There's no pre-existing sort of rap sheet on these guys that they have never done anything prior to that." How many times does it take to do 9/11?
So, do non-U.S. citizens
Once.
have like the same rights as U.S. citizens? I mean,
Yes.
So,
Oh, of course. Especially, all right, let's take it from an insurance standpoint. They can sue in this country being an illegal. They have rights. If they're injured in an accident, they have every right as an American citizen.
so that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I give the rights of a U.S. citizen to somebody that's not a citizen? Like, if you come up on a sheet of paper as possible terrorist, let's just kick them out.
Right.
And just nip that in the bud. It's like, hey, listen, you were brought up, do better, and then you can come back. But right now, you got to go. Like,
Well, it's back to his point.
Well,
It's the
and
wokeism.
if you flip that, and we travel to another country, and we screw up and get arrested, it's like, wait a minute, I'm a U.S. citizen, I have my rights. No, you don't. You're in my country
go
now.
to Dubai and get caught for stealing. You're kicked out of the country forever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, it's a one time. You're done. You
Right.
can never come back.
Right.
Isn't it like a bad game of whack-a-mole, Joseph? One pops up.
Whack-a-mole.
Yeah. One pops up, they knock it down, another one pops up here. You said you can't stop it.
Right.
It's a bad game of whack-a-mole.
It's an excellent point, and this is a great debate because you can't give up, right? So we have a fight against terrorism, we have a fight against an ideology. So what do we do if they keep popping up? And I think we're not, in my humble opinion, from my experience dealing directly with jihadists and with terrorists, both domestically but mostly abroad when I was stationed overseas in war zones and in other locations. We don't pay enough attention to counter-radicalization. So if it's an ideology, right? Think about, I mean, this is very simple. It's an ideology. What do you fight it with? A 50 millimeter gun
No.
with a F-35 fighter jet?
No.
Because what is that going to do? You're going to actually radicalize more people by dropping a bomb and killing, other innocent civilians who are just looking for that excuse to hate America even more.
Right.
So I think there is a there is a tie-in to the Christian response, which we can talk about.
We're definitely going to get there.
But the counter-radicalization is a major, black hole that we don't pay attention to. So you have to find where these nodes of radicalism, like look at the Shamsuddin Jabbar in New Orleans. Where did he go to mosque?
In Houston.
In Houston,
right next to his
where that school is for those kids that are radicalized.
So that mosque has been censored many times. In fact, there was an Algerian clerk that they had hired and who was preaching how to hate non-Muslims and that Americans and any non-Muslims are infidels and are to be killed. Eventually, the clerk was kicked out, but still, that mosque continued to propagate the curriculum and documents among their parishioners, and they control 20 other mosques in the Houston area.
Wow.
20. I will never forget this because this is a place where I used to work. Freedom House in 2005 issued a report about Saudi-funded radical curriculum in America that is inciting Muslims in America not to assimilate, but to hate Americans, not to even shake their hand, not to greet them in their festivals or Christmas or Thanksgiving, not to participate, and how to hate the non-believers. Well, Freedom House is a think tank that is partially funded by the State Department and the U.S. government. They were forced to retract that report.
Wow.
Even though it was partially published,
Of course.
or lose U.S. State Department funding.
Wow.
State Department forced Freedom House to take out this information. So again, it goes back into my counter-radicalization. So counter-radicalization starts with we need to understand how are people being radicalized. What is the curriculum? What are they teaching? Who's teaching it?
We don't even
and how
think
do you
about
stop it?
this. Doesn't even come across our minds here.
Yes.
And you said it. You told me on numerous occasions, and you said it the other day. And then when the Vegas thing happened, I'm not sure if there's a connection there or not.
Yeah,
you might
they
be.
both went to Fort Hood.
They will, but the what's happening? This guy. I mean, he was a Army vet. Mm-hmm. He's going through horrible personal things in his life. His mind is ready to absorb something because of the lowness where he is. And he just announced on social media a month ago or so that he was inspired by ISIS and all these things started adding up. And you know what I see, you're seeing something deeper, is we shouldn't be surprised by this stuff. And we do, and when we're surprised, all we do is start blaming Trump, start blaming Biden, start doing this and pointing fingers, and it creates this friction in our own country between us Christians, even in the Christian community. We need to bomb them, we need to forgive them, we need to, show grace, whatever it is. How do we handle this as Americans, man? And it's on our own soil with our own citizen.
Well, we haven't had the problem I see is that we're so sheltered in America that we've allowed this thought process of it will be okay over here.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas these people have dealt with this, like the people he's talking about in the Middle East, like they've been dealing with this for their entire lives. They don't know anything different. Mm-hmm. So they're not afraid to call it what it is because they've lived it, seen it, been bombed by it.
Well,
here we are.
Exactly. And this guy did not just get radicalized like they're trying to paint it in the media yesterday.
No. Yeah.
Or he just only became a Muslim recently. I mean, look at his name.
His parents parents had that name.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
if I read it right, his parents were Muslim.
They're a Muslim family, and he went to mosques and heard the teachings of what we now know, and our government is shy of saying this, but these are radical, teachings in mosques here. So the radicalization process, it's an inoculation that starts at an early age. Mm-hmm. And that's why part of the counter-radicalization that you need to go after are these passages that are being taught as part of the Islamic faith that incites and justifies violence. So we got to tackle that. And we got to, separate, historic times of Islam when certain acts of violence were justified, but then how do you make Islam compatible with today? But when you're going and teaching people at a young age, this is very difficult to get it out of their brain, out of their psyche. When I use the word inoculation, because what does it take? Hardship. You mentioned that the individual had bad divorces or relationships, or maybe he got fired from a job, and then is that cause enough to then
flip the switch,
stir up all of the Islamic teachings that would justify such a horrible act?
Joseph, what about that school in Houston that they're talking about? And CARE, C-A-I-R, CARE is talking about, hey, we're going to defer to, we don't want to talk about it. But there's videos of these. It's a very affluent Islamic school. These kids, I mean, it looks like these little kids are ready for war. And it's in Houston, Texas.
We call that obstruction of justice and interfering in a federal investigation. Imagine if our federal government had taken seriously what just happened in New Orleans as they did January 6th, or when they went after the parents in the COVID era and labeled them terrorists. They're not doing that to an actual terrorist.
Why?
And you
What's the
have
motivation?
a mosque that is instructing people, sending instructions openly. All of our members, do not cooperate with the FBI, do not cooperate with authorities, do not talk to journalists, refer them to the Greater Houston Islamic Community or to CARE that you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's an obstruction of justice. That's obstructing an investigation. When a crime happens in a neighborhood, police goes out and talks to neighbors. They want to know, what did you hear? What did you see? So we can gather clues. But when you have a community that's acting with impunity and instructing their own people not to cooperate with authorities, and there's zero reaction from our government, that's troubling.
You had talked in the past, how do you separate, because there are some Islamic people that are peaceful. How do they justify that? Because the Quran talks about death to the infidel. You talked about that before, people that don't believe in the Muslim code. How do you separate that? Where is that line of separation where I can be a peaceful Muslim, but if I read the full Quran, I'm not adhering to it. I need to adhere to it. I mean, I don't get it, Joseph. I really don't.
I mean, the thing is, so you have countries now like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and some other countries that are proactively fostering a peaceful dialogue and trying to tamp down any radical elements by encouraging dialogue among humanizing people. So you saw the Abrahamic Accords with some of the Arab countries and Israel. What that does, that's significant. And the significance is not trade or actual peace or hugging Israelis. Step number one, you're humanizing the other.
Right.
Okay.
That's a big deal for Saudi Arabia, despite everything that's happening in the Palestinian territories and Israel. Saudi Arabia says, we're still interested in normalizing with Israel. There'll be conditions. We want to see certain things happen before we do that, but they haven't shut the door down. That's significant. The United Arab Emirates have hosted Christian leaders and Muslim leaders. They had the Pope go in there and meet with the highest Islamic religious leader. These are the counter-radicalization things that we need to be injecting into society, because you have a Muslim segment, entire countries, entire systems, entire regimes and leadership who says, enough is enough. We don't want to be radical, and we don't want our people to be radicalized. We've realized our mistakes when Saudi Arabia used to export that radicalism and the curriculum that we talked about that was all Saudi funded. But now they realize this has to change. The only people that are standing in the way of change is the United States of America and our current administration.
Wow.
So do you
If we
think,
take the lead, others will.
I got to tell you, I think that coming up into this inauguration, we need to be like very cautious where you go, where you're at, because they've got to use the last couple of days to their advantage and get as much done as they can. And you have big sporting events coming up. You've got national championship games. You've got all these things. And I've talked to my friends about it. I think a couple of us have even talked about it. You know, I don't do the sporting event thing right now.
And Jeremy, I'm usually like you. I'm the gloom and doom guy, but I'm gonna go in a different direction with this.
Okay.
I actually think that the inauguration offers a very unique and an amazing opportunity for the United States, where for the first time we do hear people that are coming in the new administration that are saying, you know what, we don't want to continue doing things the way
That's true.
things have been done. We're going to take a critical look at the FBI. We're going to take a critical look at DOJ and the CIA. We're going to do better for America. America deserves better. And I realize we're like the Titanic. It's not going to be easy to change. But I'm encouraged, at least, that this new year, this new administration offers a glimmer of hope.
So I agree with everything you just said. My point was more that these people only have so many days left to make damage in the country.
Yes.
So I think the attacks are just starting, personally. And then I think, again, the new administration is going to open up the doors and be like, hey, guys, this was a lie. And they're going to start sharing things that they already have, right? Like,
I said I was not going to be gloom and doom, but let me go even further because I am, because I'm a counterterrorism professional. So you are absolutely right. But I don't think it's just a couple of days. I think we got a rough road ahead.
yeah.
The radicalization and the rhetoric that is in this country over the Palestinian issue, this will translate into violence before Trump takes the helm and after.
Yeah,
What
I
happened?
agree with all
Look
that.
at the rioting in New York City the day of the New Orleans attack.
Yeah, they marched in New York City with all
Calling
of
for an intifada.
Right.
yeah, calling for
Intifada.
Intifada. Yeah, that was yesterday.
I'd love to see half the people that support that agenda go over and actually meet who they're supporting.
Right.
I mean, that's what they don't even get.
Especially the rainbow people.
The danger here, and I hate to say that I'm forecasting, the danger that we're going to be facing is we like to give things labels. We like to explain things in America. We like to put them in a box. We like to explain them. So,
Everybody's got a voice and everybody's an expert.
well, so an attack will occur, and it will be linked to the Palestinian issue. And the justification is going to be, well, that's what we get for supporting Israel. And this is how we're going to box it. The same thing happened. Believe me when I tell you, the same exact thing happened, and even at the CIA level after 9/11. I'll never forget on 9/12, going back to my training, module, to my classroom, and they had brought us analysts, and who theorized that the reason that we were hit on 9/11, that we were hit yesterday, was because of the U.S. troop presence in Saudi Arabia. We had troops in Khobar, as well as our support for Israel. I'll never forget when I raised my hand and I said, you take out those two variables. There are no U.S. troops in Saudi Arabia. There's no such a thing as Israel. It's all Palestine. 9/11 still would have happened. They looked at me like, what do you mean? Because we are tempted by trying to box things and explain things. So I go back again to how we started. We're talking about an ideology that doesn't go away. It's an ideology that's built on the destruction of any non-Muslim. So you could give it any excuse. We can try to justify it, and it's going to be used for political reasons. Oh, see, that's what we get for our support for Israel.
Well, and that mindset's been going on for generations over there. And so it's part of their culture. So we think, well, if we're nice to them or if we say nice things to them, they're going to change like we would. And it's just not the case.
Have you
We
guys
expect
seen
people to act, Brad. Like this is a huge point. We expect people to act as we would,
Yes.
Right.
and we don't see them for who they really are
Yeah.
and where they're coming from.
But I don't understand how does it benefit for our government to not call terrorism what it is? Why? Like, are we afraid of the Middle East people? Are we just trying to? Do we think if we're nice to them, and don't call them out that they're going to be nice to us back?
Well, you look at the nodes of influence, on our government. You've had Iran apologists who, anytime that we would do something or suggest anything against Iran, you have people within our own government who are blocking this. The same thing with radical Muslims. I'll never forget when Obama was in office, the people who were invited to come to the White House, they were members of the Jama'at al-Islamiyah. Jama'at al-Islamiyah, they're not the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the terrorist organization that killed President Sadat and have carried out attacks and all throughout the Middle East, and eventually became the branch from the Egyptian jihad that joined the Saudi branch and became Al-Qaeda.
Wow.
These are the people that we are bringing in.
Well, we can't be naive enough either to think that there's not infiltration at the highest level. I mean, it's definitely there. I mean, you're talking about an ideology, again, that's been built into people's blood. And in our country, anybody can move up and go through the ranks. So all you have to do is be quiet about it. And, I mean,
Absolutely.
you can get into positions where you can start to influence.
Well, not just quietly. I mean, we've seen some indications of that with the conflict with Iran, where you had people within DOD, CIA have been arrested. Some have not been arrested, who have leaked information that would be damaging to U.S. national security and revealing plans that would make Israel vulnerable
Oh, yeah.
within our own government.
And let's be clear real quick, because we're talking about Muslims a lot. We're not talking about all Muslims. The radical
Correct.
piece is what
Correct.
we're talking about here. So
Correct.
Yeah, it broke my heart. As soon as that happened the other day, you said ISIS, my mind went, how'd they get in this country? It was an American.
well, that's exactly the point, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of frightening.
Well, and the further we get away from Christian values in the country, the more this stuff's going to leak in.
Back to your point, Joseph, what bothers me more with people within our government is they don't suffer any consequences for their behavior. I mean, you look at a particular congresswoman who is she's anti-Semite, she says stuff that wouldn't be allowed in Congress at all 50 years ago. She would be gone. And a lot of other people in our government who have done things that you and I would be in prison for, they don't suffer the consequences ever. And that's what bothers me more than anything else. And hopefully this new administration, with people that are moving into certain positions, are going to start saying, look, we've got to look at this particular issue. We got to look at other issues, and people are going to suffer the consequences for it. So maybe that will stop something on the front end before something like this happens again.
Luigi Mangione gunned down the United Healthcare CEO, right? There's a huge. They created a GoFundMe page to pay for his defense. They got him on video.
Who the hell is doing that?
You didn't see that one?
Oh, dude!
No.
And the division.
The chicks that think he's hot.
Yeah, and they, you know what? That guy probably deserved it because of how screwed up our healthcare program is, and all they do is try to profit.
This is third world country stuff, guys.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
shouldn't see this in the United States.
No. You just read the feeds on the people that are. That's a thinking thing.
It is.
And
To Jeremy's point, sorry about ideology, because that is a very important point. Both of you guys, made that point, and you mentioned about not all Muslims, and we have to be careful about that. And I do want to repeat what you just said, because going back to the ideology that messes with the head, Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula have, few years back, I know exactly when because I was stationed overseas. They came up with an online magazine. It's called Inspire. And Inspire magazine was the most worrisome publication that Al Qaeda did, because it was in English, perfect English. It was sleek. It was easily accessible, and it spoke
directly to us. Yes.
So you find many of these people, and it will come out again with Shamsuddin and others who've committed terrorist acts in this country. They've had copies of Inspire, which teaches them. One of the articles is like how to make a bomb in your mom's kitchen, and it makes it very sort of appealing, kind of like young people, to young radicals. So we've moved beyond, just terrorists coming from Saudi Arabia or Egypt committing an act here, like a 9/11, to somebody here who was born here, who's a U.S. citizen, as you mentioned, and who carry an attack here. The warped mindset that we have within our DOJ and FBI, we are only concerned when that happens on labeling it domestic terrorism. It doesn't matter. Again, we're going back to the ideology. This is terrorism. They say, this is homegrown. Okay, maybe the New York attack had a different ideology, different reasons for carrying a criminal, aspects of that. But we can't just, try to label everything, and we're trying to now equate that the parents of the COVID era are just as a terrorist as what just happened in New Orleans.
Define homegrown for me. Do you agree with that label?
Homegrown could be many things.
Okay.
We're trying to label things so we can prosecute people.
Okay.
So we say homegrown because we now have an interest, because of the current DOJ and the current environment, the current culture within the FBI, to label anybody who opposes the government as domestic terrorists. The same month that January 6th took place, where people marched, entered the Capitol building, the parliament in Bangladesh was stormed, torched, burnt. People are sick and tired of the government and the corruption, and the State Department issued a statement applauding the democratic change and the will of the people to change their government. Are you kidding me? I'm not condoning what happened in January 6th, but what I'm saying is, we are not being consistent. We are hypocrites, and the world sees that. Out of a desire to label and prosecute Americans, to justify FISA and being able to monitor U.S. citizens. These are laws that were designed to go after radical Islamists and people who are coming from abroad to cause us harm. Now we are using it against U.S. citizens, and that's disturbing.
When this happened, I saw a lot of conservative commentators immediately start pointing the finger that we immediately thought it was an illegal person that was here that did it. How do we combat that?
Well, we know that ideology does not respect borders, right? So you don't have to cross a border to be influenced or to be brainwashed or incited into taking an act of violence. I think in an emotional time, people tend to conflate things and issues. Yeah. We do have a serious issue at the border. The unchecked migration of millions and millions of people that are coming into this country is a security risk.
Big time, yeah.
We will continue to reel from that. This is not going to go away. There's going to be years and years of consequences of all these people that have no security and background checks that we allowed into this country. So I think the problem is when people react emotionally to an event like what happened in New Orleans, and we want to place the blame, and so we conflate. Now, could there be an element, like you said, from the southern border or from the northern border? From it could be. But I think the issue we need to focus on is we have a problem with ideology,
big time,
with radicalism in this country, and that is being exploited by both people that are here as well as our enemies. How forgetful we are when nobody's even talking about the recent attempts to assassinate President Trump. And one of them was linked to Iran. And there was a plot where the Iranians sent people to carry out attacks here. And these people did come across the border. So I think
that story is gone.
It's gone. But I think the danger from what you're saying is so important, because the danger of conflating and saying, linking this to the southern border immediately and falling on our sword, then we water down and we take away from the legitimate concerns.
Right.
And the legitimate threats.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be wise and get more information. And I hugely and squarely blame our government, our federal government, for the lack of information. What's that going to do? People are going to theorize. People are going to come up with their own conclusions and going to place the blame left, place the blame right, and then south and the north, because our government is not saying anything. They either don't know, which is troubling, and that's what I've experienced when seeing the DOJ and the FBI. They're great at investigating something after the fact, but we don't need a government that investigates after the fact. It's too late. We need them to be proactive. We need a CIA. We need an FBI that can help prevent terrorist acts from occurring before they do.
Yeah.
How was he radicalized? Are they talking to the mosque? They're not. Are they talking to people that know him and can better understand, where this radicalism, how who in ISIS was he in contact with? Guaranteed that he was in contact with people abroad.
It's going to get real bad, because the thing about ideologies, especially when they start getting radicalized, is that they end up radicalizing other ideologies.
Yes.
So now you end up with...
It's like a domino.
It is a really bad thing. I mean, you get a bunch of... there's radical Christians out there, right? We can't say there's not. There are. And when these guys decide they're going to fight back, now all of a sudden you've got a war going on inside the country between radical Muslims and radical Christians and maybe radical Jews. We're talking about religion here. It's different.
Guys down in Okeechobee.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They're going to be feeding those guys the alligators.
To emphasize your point, let's not forget we have countries like Russia, China, and Iran who have declared war on us. We are at war. Let's not be under any other illusion that this is some conflict.
No.
We are at war. How easy is it for them to use these divisions that you're talking about to pit different groups within America against each other?
Oh, yeah.
You've heard about the pager operation that Israel did against Hezbollah, right?
That was awesome.
Right? That was it's incredible. But
That's
that idea was born 10 years earlier. Those pagers were actually being manufactured 2 years prior to them being delivered to Hezbollah. I want you to think of that in terms of what is China, what is Russia, what is Iran planting in the United States, in our media, in people's minds, and how they could activate that at the time of their choosing
Right.
to attack us from within.
Well, especially as much stuff as we buy, right? Everything we buy is outsourced at this point.
Yeah.
There's the physical things that we buy that could be shut down, and that's very scary. The FBI just finally mumbled and stumbled onto the warning against the routers, the D-Link routers, which China, the Chinese government, is specifically programming so that they'll be able to shut them down.
I can't remember who it was, one of the old Russian leaders, Stalin or Brezhnev, saying that the United States would crumble from within. One of them said it years ago. And that's where I want to kind of make the pivot here to us as Christians. And I just give this example, not mentioning names, but after some of these events that have happened, the school shooting and then Germany and then here, you see the social media presence of, pray for New Orleans, pray for Germany, pray for that school that, the 15-year-old was shooting in, not too long ago. And you see that, and then in the same thread, Christians, screw prayer. It's time to quit praying and start doing something. That's a dividing line within the Christian community of two things. Where do you show grace and compassion? Well, you're always supposed to show grace, but you also have to have boundaries. And where do you say, screw all that? Let's get our guns out. And as Christians, what do we do with this?
The Bible is very clear about the fact that we are going to be tested. The fact that there are going to be trials and tribulations. There are going to be wars, rumors of wars. There are going to be sons who will rise against their parents, parents against their children. This has been foretold.
Yeah.
This is a time of testing. this is the time when Christians need to be grounded in the Word of God and realize that more than ever, we need to be agents of influence in our society. You know what? Yes, I will go along with somebody who says, well, prayer is not enough. Okay, I'll go along with you. But then what are you doing to be an agent of influence to bring the Word of God into your society? Yes, you're right. It's not enough. You have to make your light shine. Yeah. You have to show your Christianity. You have to be out there demonstrating what you really are, because this is the time of your testing. You've went to church all your life. You've read the Bible. You've prayed and you've been prayed upon. Mm-hmm. Now is your time. That was not out in a void. You are being tested. Mm. You are now under the fire. Mm. How are we going to act? Mm. Are we going to go off in like a worldly response? Let's pick up our weapons, or let's do something physical. That means you were never grounded in the first place.
Amen.
Well, and that doesn't mean you don't act, right? I mean, if you're sitting there and you see something, and I mean, I don't know about all of you guys, but I mean, I carry a gun a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And I see somebody doing something bad. Yeah, I mean, I'm there. I'm told to protect my family, and I'm told to protect those around me, and that can be a Christian response. But I'm not supposed to go out and hunt these people down.
Right? I agree.
That's the difference, right? Like, I mean, yes. It's okay. Yeah, I'm going to be vigilant. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to do the things I'm supposed to do. But like at the end of the day, like I'm not going to go out and try and hunt down terror cells myself.
Exactly.
If anything, if I got a chance to influence a Muslim friend of mine, I would have that conversation. I just joined another Indian-owned company that we have a heavy Muslim and as well as Hindu and other. So I actually have an opportunity to talk to these people and say, hey, well, tell me your side of the story. Like, what do you think about that? Can I tell you what Jesus said about that? By the way, like, your guy
I like that. I
recognized him, yes. Right?
We have an opportunity now to pray. We have a new administration. We have a new government. This is a critical time. These are crossroads for the United States of America. You've got people that are being nominated for key positions from DOD, FBI, DOJ, CIA, so many other, influential positions. Let's really pray that the right people will be confirmed. Yeah. I'm not saying that I agree with everybody that's been nominated, but we need God to guide this country. Mm-hmm. We need God. I mean, the Bible tells us to pray for our leaders. Mm-hmm. We need to seriously pray for our incoming leaders. Yeah. We are at crossroads. I can't overemphasize that.
I'm reminded in Joel, as you were talking, Joseph, it shall come about after this that I shall pour out my spirit on all mankind, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions, even on the male and female servants I will pour out my spirit in those days. Satan loses. Okay, we know that. God is going to do whatever it takes that none should perish. I don't know if you guys have seen some of the stuff that's coming out of the Middle East about these Muslims actually having dreams that Jesus is speaking to them and talking to them in these dreams, and they're actually converting to Christianity because of that. That's the kind of stuff in the supernatural world that's going to happen, because we all know that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood but we wrestle against principalities and powers in the heavenly places. And the fight is not ours. It's God's. And in the end, he wins, and he's going to do everything he can that none should perish. And as believers, you said, even Christians are radical about stopping prayer. Prayer is one of the major weapons that we have to fight whatever situation we're in and we're among. And I truly believe that. And I'm going to see in my lifetime things like this happening, and it's already started.
It broke my heart when I saw some of that stuff from people in my community. Screw the prayers and
wow.
And enough's enough. But you're right, Chef. I mean, the light of Christ shining from your eyes is going to make a difference. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that'll change an ideology. Mm-hmm. It ain't going to be going shooting up somebody, or it's probably not going to be walking down a street with a sign.
But what's that say about the Christian that says, I'm just going to go kill people? Like, I actually sit back and think to myself, like, did you really get the message that I got? Because my job is to go talk to that person. I'm not saying walk into a mosque and start a conversation with ISIS. Like, that's not a good idea. But like, there are people you can talk to that will listen, and you have a chance to influence.
Yeah. Humans are the same all throughout the ages. Think of when Jesus started his ministry, and the Jews looked at him and said, What do you mean? That's not the king of the Jews.
Right.
You're not, whipping our enemies. You're not killing them. You're not slaughtering them. You're not killing the Romans. What is this? And yet he came with the most radical change, which is, I'm here to save your soul, give you forgiveness, and to graft Jews and Gentiles into, one entity. That this is a plan of redemption. But our human brains sometimes think that, we want something more radical, something more loud and violent.
Yeah.
It is the same thing. And I tell Christians today the same thing that you are listening to or that you're reading, their comments, Trey, about, prayer is not enough. Have you forgotten the power of Christ and how he transformed the world? And how powerful that is. We serve a living God. And I say it again, this is a time of testing. You either believe or you don't.
Amen. Yeah.
Well, and Jesus did it from the inside out. He was changing people's hearts as opposed to, striking down the enemies and all that kind of stuff. And going back to what you're talking about counter-programming the ideology.
Yeah.
Same type of thing. That's where the lasting change is, not the external, I'm going to go punch this guy in the face and put him down. It's the changing of the hearts, and that goes back to prayer as well.
Amen.
Praying that God would change people's hearts and move on them, that's the lasting power, and we have the advantage of having knowledge of the truth. So we can be bold in the truth, what we know of the Word, and we don't have to be afraid of the other ideology or what people are saying, because we know what the truth is. We speak it, and darkness flees from the light.
That's right. He has overcome this world.
Yeah.
One of the more significant parts of this investigation is going to be the casing that took place. So when these people, before they target a location, they will go and they will case it. They'll take pictures. There will be a footprint. There'll be a digital footprint, and there'll be other footage that we're going to get. So that's going to answer a lot of questions, but you're right. That takes a long time.
Yeah.
To go through all of this. That's why the premature declarations, this is not terrorism, or this has no links to overseas. Oh, this is homegrown. I think all this is premature. I think we need to really press the FBI and DOJ to do their job and to do what they're really good at and investigate and be transparent to the extent they can. Of course, there are times where they can't share stuff because it compromises investigation, but this caught them, off guard. Nobody was on their radar screen.
Right. As we start circling up on this, you mentioned it earlier. As Americans, are we supposed just to have our head on a swivel everywhere we go all the time? I mean, the big sporting events, or just going down to like St. Patty's Day celebration down on Meg O'Malley's downtown with all those people that converge March 17th. I mean, that's a prime place for someone to make a statement and pick off people.
Well, those are soft targets. I mean, they're going to go after that stuff. It's easy.
But we can do more than just, be paranoid. And I always say this, like with security training, you are more empowered because you got to know what you're looking for. For the federal government or any local government, when they say the phrase "see something, say something," and leave it at that, people say, "What the heck is that supposed to mean?"
Well, that's
see what? How do I see? What am I seeing? If you don't know what you're seeing, how are you going to say something? Because also, don't forget that you want to be culturally sensitive. If you see something, am I being prejudiced against this person?
I saw a Muslim guy set down a pressure cooker, but I can't say anything right now because that's profiling.
It's common, but it's more common sense, right? And people, there's a lot of information that is out there, and I know I partner with some people who provide this kind of training that empowers people to say, okay, here is what a suspicious activity looks like, and here's a crash course, right? Figure out what is the baseline. What is the baseline? What is normal in your community, in your church, in your grocery store? And then once you see an anomaly, something that is out of the norm, out of the baseline, that's when you should start paying attention. So that's being less paranoid. That's actually being more aware of, what is your baseline and what deviates from that, and then follow that to its logical conclusion. Could it be somebody that is mentally disturbed? Could it be somebody that needs medical help? Could it be, Why did that person leave that backpack and run out of the grocery store?
Right.
Or if you see a food trailer pull up and it's selling shaved ice and it says Aloha Snack Bar on it.
I mean, that might be a clue.
Run.
Could be a clue.
No, but these are the things that empower people. Be aware of your surroundings, and I would certainly, particularly in large gatherings, there was a lot of advice, there was a lot of warnings prior to Christmas, prior to the holidays for Europe and the United States, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. New Year's Eve, New Orleans, you know it's going to be rocking. Prime territory for someone to do something to make a statement.
Always look for an exit. I always tell people when you walk into a crowded area or a sporting event, what is your exit strategy?
Right.
Just think about it. It takes you a few seconds, and then communicate it with your buddies, with your friends, with your family. Say, if something happens, this is how we're going to exit. When you're in church, say, if there's chaos and nobody's giving you guidance, figure out where's the nearest exit entrance, and then come up with a plan. And then if you're separated, come up with a rally point.
Fantastic, man. I'm so happy that you are a friend of our ministry and that you're here with us, bro. You and Michelle, two amazing people and amazing friends. Your insights are great. I knew as soon as I was watching that 2 days ago, I was like, man, and when I reached out to you, you said it, ISIS, period. Nothing else. And then a little while later, you said, unfortunately, get ready. There's more. And so our prayers are for our country, that we heal from this and we are strategic and our leaders understand Jesus and how to approach things through his light instead. We got a men's breakfast coming up February 22nd, and I've asked Joseph to join us. It's going to be an update on Middle East and some of the affairs, some of the things going on, and we're also going to be interacting or tying in men getting more involved in foreign mission work. And so it's going to be at the Church of Vieira. It's their men's event that we're going to be helping them with. February 22nd, it's a men's breakfast, starts at 7 o'clock. Come on in, for a love offering of $5, you get all the bacon you can eat, and you get to hear Joseph address where we are today. And then we're going to have some roundtable on different men in our ministry and at the church that have gone to Costa Rica or to Juarez, and the importance of us shining that light of Christ and other countries to maybe help that the situations of what's going on in the mind of people. So that's February 22nd, Church of Vieira, Melbourne, Florida. So I can't wait to have you come back out. And we got to have Michelle on with her brand new book. My wife read it already. I'm going to start reading it this weekend.
Nice.
So we will get that.
Great book.
So with
What's
that,
it called?
Get off the X.
Get
That's right.
off the X. I wish I had the copy of it to shine, but we'll have her in to talk about it very, very soon, because the book is actually, you can pre-order it now.
Yes.
And so as it gets closer to the time of the shipping, we'll have her on. Pray for our country. Pray for our leaders. The next 17 days could be kind of crazy, and prayers for a smooth inauguration, and then just a different way and a different outlook moving forward, especially on topics like what we're talking about today. So with that said, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Till next time, I'm Trey.
I'm Michael.
I'm Brad.
I'm Jeremy.
This is
Joseph.
Joseph. Let's do that over, okay?
He was on it, man.
He was
ready.
on. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So with that said, I'm Trey.
I'm Michael.
I'm Brad.
I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Joseph.
The man, the myth, the legend. We are the
Cussin Christians.